Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is racking up the air miles. He recently spent quite a bit of time visiting countries in Africa, campaigning for a UN Security Council seat. To talk more about it is our national parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion. Ray, many people argue that Trudeau should not be trying to get a UN Security Council seat, considering the United Nations is not an organization we should even be associated with.
Yeah, that's a point of view we've heard in the past few years. But the fact of the matter is, Justin Trudeau declared Canada's candidacy back in 2016, and now he's campaigning for one of two available seats. The issue is for Canada, we have two competitors, Ireland and Norway, and both of those two European countries, Hal, are set to have an edge on Canada because they've been campaigning for longer than Ottawa has. They're also spending more money than Canada is on things like peacekeeping in Africa, development, money for less fortunate countries. But the fact of the matter is, the race is on, and yeah, Prime Minister Trudeau spent quite a bit of time in the past week campaigning in Africa. You have to know that Africa is key to whichever country is trying to obtain a seat on the UN Security Council because it's a big block of countries, 54 countries in all. So the Prime Minister traveled to Somalia earlier this week, where a major gathering of African leaders was taking place. He then traveled to Senegal in the western part of the continent, where he obtained the support of that country's president. He said that his country will be voting for Canada, so that's a plus for Canada. But Canada's bid appears very unsure. The Norwegian Prime Minister was in Ethiopia at the same time Justin Trudeau was there earlier this week, and she publicly said, in front of cameras, that she believes her country is way ahead of Canada. So good luck, Mr. Trudeau. We still don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, the vote is still a few months away. It's going to take place in New York City in June, but it would be a major embarrassment for Mr. Trudeau to fail in that campaign, because when he announced, when he became prime minister in 2015, he went to the United Nations and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Canada is back." Well, if Canada's back and fails to win one of those two available seats, that would be a big embarrassment for Prime Minister Trudeau. You'll recall that it was pretty embarrassing for the Harper government to fail to win a seat 10 years ago. It was actually the first time that Canada had campaigned and failed to win a seat on the UN Security Council. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens in June when the vote takes place in New York.
So, Ray, bottom line, what's the advantage of Canada having a UN Security Council seat?
Well, Canada wants to have its voice heard on the international scene, and that's one of the ways you can achieve that. That's certainly an argument that Canada, that the Prime Minister is expressing to Canadians who keep asking the same question. What's the need? Because Canada so far has spent more than $2 million campaigning around the world, and it's not over because the Prime Minister is actually scheduled to be in Barbados on Monday and Tuesday. A major gathering of Caribbean world leaders is set to take place there, so he's going to spend 2 more days abroad as he continues to campaign for one of those two available seats.
Now, speaking of our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau missed the deadline to file his report with the Ethics Commissioner. What does this mean for Monsieur Trudeau?
Well, yet more problems for the Prime Minister with the Ethics Commissioner. I know he was, and you know that he was raked over the coals on a couple of occasions by Canada's Ethics Commissioner in the past few years for things he did. You have to know that all sitting MPs, 60 days after their election or re-election, they have to file a report with the Ethics Commissioner detailing all of their private interests and that of their families. This is to avoid situations where an MP, including the Prime Minister, because he's also an MP, could be found to be in a conflict of interest situation. Now, the deadline for Prime Minister Trudeau was January 13th, but we found out this week that he has yet to file his papers. The Prime Minister's office says the failure to file was an oversight and that it's being corrected. So it just looks bad. You might be wondering what the consequence might be.
Right.
Nothing. There are no consequences, no penalties. So
No slap on the wrist
yeah,
or anything.
nothing. No
Wow.
consequences, no fines, absolutely nothing. So it's leading some people to wonder, why have rules in the first place when you may not respect them and there are no consequences? So, yeah,
Ray, let's talk about the federal Conservative leadership race. I mean, the Tories are going to pick their new leader in June. And it appears as though Peter MacKay really doesn't have a lot of competition. Originally, we thought maybe former Foreign Affairs Minister in the Harper government, John Baird, may have been his biggest competition, but Baird said, not interested.
Yeah, that's what he announced on Twitter on Thursday afternoon. Former Minister Baird becoming the latest potential high-profile candidate to take a pass on this race. We talked a few weeks ago about former Quebec Premier Jean Charest, MP Pierre Poilievre, who has a seat here in the Ottawa area. Former interim Conservative leader Rona Ambrose was also facing a lot of pressure to enter this race. They've all decided to take a pass. Former Minister Baird announcing on Thursday on Twitter that he's happy where he is. He works for a major law firm in Toronto. He's been out of politics for 5 years now, enjoying it. But there was a lot of pressure on him to reconsider, given all the other big names who've decided to take a pass. Quite frankly, it's astonishing. You could understand big names decided against running 3 years ago when Justin Trudeau was still very popular. The honeymoon with the new prime minister was still a thing. But now, Justin Trudeau is not the same Justin Trudeau from 3 years ago. The honeymoon has been over for a while. And whoever becomes the next leader of the official opposition, the Conservative Party of Canada, will stand probably a very good chance of becoming the next prime minister of this country. So it's kind of surprising to see so many big names deciding not to enter the race at this point.
So it's really Peter MacKay's to lose, isn't it? I mean, I can't see him getting a lot of competition from Aaron O'Toole or Marilyn Gladu.
No, he's not getting a lot of competition right now. As a matter of fact, here in the nation's capital, what a lot of people are saying is that Peter MacKay is basically running against Peter MacKay right now. He's made a few mistakes since he launched his campaign a few weeks ago. A tweet that his campaign decided to put out there that he didn't like, criticizing Justin Trudeau for expensing things like yoga lessons, an interview with CTV that his staff decided to cut right in the middle, interrupting him. So, yeah, he's made a few mistakes, not to mention his campaign launch, where a lot of people criticized his French. Former Minister MacKay saying, Je serai candidate, basically announcing that he's a woman entering the race as a woman. So some mistakes were made earlier on that he's going to have to correct. But, he's the front runner by all accounts right now.
Many people in the Alberta energy sector, Ray, are eagerly awaiting Ottawa's crucial decision on the TECK Frontier Mine project. Alberta is trying to dig itself out of one big recession, and many argue we really need this here in this province.
Yeah, but the problem is a lot of MPs in Justin Trudeau's party, in the Liberal Party, are campaigning against it. They're putting a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister not to give the green light to that big project in Alberta because of its environmental effects. So many of these MPs are saying, look, we just spent an election campaign last fall campaigning on the environment, on the need to have a greener planet. And people on the doorstep would tell us, but you guys bought a pipeline in Western Canada, the Trans Mountain pipeline. So they're saying if on top of having purchased the pipeline, we give the green light to a project like TECK Frontier, we'll be dead in the water when the next election comes around. So Justin Trudeau's under a lot of pressure right now. On the one hand, many of his MPs here in Eastern Canada campaigning against it. And on the other hand, of course, Alberta and Premier Jason Kenney putting a lot of pressure on the federal cabinet to approve that project that is so important to the Albertan economy. Mr. Trudeau is between a rock and a hard place right now. Another very tough call for the Prime Minister to make in the coming weeks, and he's got until the end of February to make that decision.
And it's interesting, many federal Liberals wonder why they were shut out of Alberta. I don't know why. How could that be? Ray, most Canadians say Ottawa should not allow Huawei to participate in Canada's 5G network. Does it boil down to safety concerns?
It boils down to safety concerns, basically, essentially, because many of Canada's allies, including and especially the United States, have decided to bar Huawei from taking part in their upcoming 5G network. So Mr. Trudeau is also under a lot of pressure with regards to that decision. That's another very tough decision for which he's between a rock and a hard place. The players are different in this case. On the one hand, the Americans are putting a lot of pressure on Canada to bar Huawei from entering or playing any sort of role in Canada's upcoming 5G network. And on the other, China pushing for the opposite. And there was a poll conducted by the Angus Reid Institute in the last couple of weeks that showed 56% of Canadians think Huawei should not be allowed. So over half of Canadians side with the Americans on this issue. 34% of respondents believe the Chinese company should be allowed to play some sort of limited role, kind of like in Great Britain, perhaps. And 10% saying Huawei should be allowed to fully participate. You can see that these people are in the minority. We still don't know exactly when Ottawa is going to make a decision on that front. The former public safety minister, Ralph Goodale, who lost his seat in the last election, said last spring in 2019 that Canada's decision would come before the election. The election obviously has come and gone, and we still don't know when Ottawa is going to make a call. This is another one of those tough decisions that the Trudeau Liberals seem to be punting down the field for as long as they can.
Ray, Federal Finance Minister Bill Morneau says the coronavirus outbreak will have a major impact on the economy. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the international economy in Canada won't be an exception, and it's no surprise why. It's no secret why. It's because China is Canada's second largest trading partner, and many major cities have been virtually shut down for the past few weeks. People aren't consuming goods the way they normally are, including Canadian gas. So it will have a major impact likely on Canada's economy, according to the finance minister. He said, Minister Morneau, this week that he expects the coronavirus to be a major topic of discussion when he and his G20 counterparts meet in the next couple of weeks to discuss the worldwide economy.
The Canadian government is also very concerned about the blockades affecting CN railways.
Absolutely, especially after news that we got on Thursday afternoon that Canadian National, the CN, will be shutting down gradually its entire Eastern Canadian network of railways. So, not a single train in the coming days will be moving for the foreseeable future east of Toronto. This is major news. Adding to that, Via Rail also announcing on Thursday afternoon that they will be canceling every single train running across Canada.
Wow.
As a result of the blockades that we've been seeing across the country for the last few weeks. So obviously it's a quite complicated issue for the Trudeau government. We're talking about an issue regarding a pipeline in British Columbia. Many band councils, native councils have decided to support that project. The problem is many hereditary leaders are adamantly opposed to that gas pipeline, natural gas pipeline in British Columbia. So the federal government, which promised reconciliation with Indigenous communities across the country, is trying to navigate this issue very carefully. But the fact of the matter is, it's starting to have a major impact on Canada's economy. When trains aren't running, many goods don't get delivered. So it's having a big impact on our economy. And Justin Trudeau is under a lot of pressure right now from premiers, from the opposition, to find a solution ASAP. As a matter of fact, a lot of people are calling on the Prime Minister to cancel his international travels, his campaign to try and get a UN Security Council seat, and just stay home to try and broker a deal, find a solution to this issue.
Wonder why, maybe that's why some of his hairs are going a little gray in the beard and the mustache. You know, there's a little bit of stress with our Prime Minister these days.
A little bit of stress. I mean, when you look at the situation, the trains aren't running. He's got to make a major decision where Huawei is concerned. And this tech frontier thing, yeah, I'm surprised he doesn't have more gray hair.
Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion, joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks again, Ray.
You bet, Hal.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.